The quiet island. When Flo heard the car approaching, she darted off the road and crouched low behind an olive tree. She didn't dare move. At 13, she knew how dangerous it was to be out here alone. The car rattled past, the sound fading in the distance, leaving only the hum of crickets. As she stood up, the ground beneath her tilted, like the deck of a sinking ship, and she had to clutch the tree for balance. Another dizzy spell. They'd been hitting her all morning. She needed to find food, and soon she stepped back onto the road and started walking. After about an hour, as the sun crept over the mountains, Flo spotted an orange grove a few paces off the road. The ground was littered with fruit, but most had passed their best. She saw a couple of ripe ones still clinging to their branches, and after a few attempts, she managed to jump high enough to reach them. She sat down in the dappled shade and demolished the fruits. The juices ran down her chin, but she didn't care. She hadn't eaten real food in weeks. After a short rest and a brief pee in the bushes, Flo continued along the road. She didn't know how much further she'd have to walk, but she knew that so long as she kept the mountains behind her, she'd be all right. By mid-morning, Flo had given up wiping the sweat from her brow, surrendering her eyes to the stinging. She wanted to rest, but knew that the heat would only get worse as the day wore on. Besides, her parents would have surely woken up by now and discovered she had gone. Would they come looking for her? Would they be brave enough? Could they be brave enough? Flo pressed on, the trees thinning until there was nothing besides a few fragrant shrubs and yellowed grass. She grabbed a handful of thyme and rubbed it with her fingers, the sharp scent cutting through the dry air. Her eyes widened when she noticed the view ahead of her. "There it is," she said, running a hand through her hair, which was now thick and greasy. In front of her, not half a mile away, was the sparkling waters of the Mediterranean Sea. "Eat that, Duke of Edinburgh," she said, and laughed. In the distance, she could make out a small fishing village, with its rocky pier and shallow, sandy beach. There were no boats at the pier, nor any out at sea. There were no planes in the sky, either. It was all so eerie. Flo had arrived in Crete less than 2 months ago. She'd been brimming with excitement for her first holiday abroad. But now, after everything that had happened, it seemed like a distant memory. She paused for a moment, her gaze drifting to a tiny island not far from the shore. It was too small to be inhabited by people, but she could see specks of birds circling above. She wondered if it was possible to swim to the island. Back in school, she'd earned her 200-meter badge, which she was quite proud of, though this distance looked at least twice that. Pulling herself away from the view, she followed the road. It twisted and turned and descended toward the town. And eventually, the surface transitioned from gravel to tarmac. The first building Flo came across was a row of holiday villas, each a different pastel color. She approached one of them, standing on her tiptoes so she could see over the stone wall and into the garden. There was a swimming pool, but the water was murky green. A body floated face down in the center. She wandered over to the next villa, which didn't have a wall, and was relieved to find that the swimming pool was empty. Unfortunately, the sunbed next to it was not. A woman lay flat on the bed, her arms dangling on either side. She wore a black bikini, and her spilled guts glistened in the sunlight, festering and dissected by the feral cats. Flo turned to leave, but after a few paces, her morbid curiosity got the better of her. She glanced back and stiffened. The woman was sitting bolt upright. Flo swallowed hard and hurried along the road. Behind her, she heard a low gurgle, wet and bubbling. The village was only a short walk from the villa. It had a central road that led directly to the seafront. Along the road were numerous shops that sold what her dad would call tourist tat. Trying her luck, Flo stepped into one of them at random. Inside, the air was thick and stale. Flo scanned the shelves, hoping for something, anything, edible. The place, however, had been ransacked. What was left had little use to her now. Fridge magnets, postcards, swimming goggles, ceramic figures, tourist guides offering the hidden gems of Crete, handcrafted wooden coasters and honey dippers. And there, right at the back of the store, perched high on the top shelf, stood a large jar of stuffed green olives. Flo didn't care much for olives, but it was not the time to be picky. She walked down the aisle toward the shelves and reached upward, but it was no good. She needed to get higher. She found an empty crate nearby. Using it as a step, she touched the base of the jar with her fingertips. It would have to do. She began to edge the jar when something stirred from somewhere inside the store. Flo turned her head, her eyes darting from aisle to aisle, searching for the source of the sound. Nothing. All right, she thought. Just grab the olives and get the hell out of here. She continued maneuvering the jar, inch by inch, until she could get her hands under it. Got it. She lowered the jar and tucked it safely under her arm. As she climbed down, her vision suddenly blurred. A million black flies swarming behind her eyelids. The ground seemed to shift beneath her feet, and the next thing she knew, she was lying flat on her back. Dazed, Flo tilted her head to one side, her gaze lingering on the smashed jar of olives beside her, the brine pooling across the floor. Something crunched over the glass. Flo snapped her head up and gasped. A slender, crooked figure was shuffling toward her, walking over the shards of glass. She was an elderly woman. Her skin was pale and torn like tissue paper. Her sunken eyes were a clouded gray, and unblinking, Flo scrambled to her feet, scoring her palms on the broken glass as she stood. Though she barely felt the pain, the woman inched closer. Her jaw hung open, her lips cracked and bloodless. A faint groan rose from her throat, like a rusted hinge. The old woman stood between Flo and the exit. Flo hesitated. Her eyes flickered between the woman and the doorway. She picked up the crate and shoved it into the elderly woman. The woman staggered back, arms flailing. Flo tossed the crate aside and made a break for the exit. She was almost there when the light from the doorway darkened. A hulking creature stepped into the store. It stood 6 feet tall, its chest and shoulders matted with hair. Blistered skin peeled away in leathery strips, scorched by the heat. The creature gave a deep, sickening groan as it lumbered toward Flo. Behind it, more zombies filtered in. 2, 3, 4. So many. Flo stepped backward, but slipped on a smear of sun cream, landing hard on the floor. She yelled in pain. She grabbed the shelves and pulled herself up, knocking over a stand of sunglasses that clattered to the floor. Flo spun around and froze. The elderly woman stood at the end of the aisle, blocking her path. "No," Flo whispered. A wave of hopelessness overwhelmed her. She pressed her back against the wall, her body trembling. The undead closed in. Flo squeezed her eyes shut, bracing herself, waiting for the inevitable. 1 second, 2 seconds, 3 seconds, 4. She opened her eyes. The zombie, the big one, stood in front of her. The stench was suffocating. Flo held her breath, remaining completely still. She watched with confusion as it turned its back to her, looking down at where the sunglasses had landed. The others slowed too. Flo frowned. What was happening? She waved her hand in front of one of them. It didn't even flinch. They must have been attracted to the sound, Flo thought. They're not interested in me. Flo slipped past the mob. They looked almost as confused as Flo felt, and stepped out into the blinding sun. I'm invisible. For the next couple of hours, Flo embraced her newfound superpower. She raided the shops and managed to scavenge a box of honey-soaked pastry nests and 2 cans of Greek lemonade. She consumed the lot in one sitting before moving to other shops, trying on dresses and sun hats and expensive jewelry. She grew strangely accustomed to the zombies, now that they didn't seem to see her as a meal. When she grew tired, Flo headed to the beach. She laid a towel on an empty sunbed and sat down. A few zombies rested on nearby beds, cooking in the heat. Another was crawling across the sand. A cockroach scuttled across its back. A young boy, who looked to be of a similar age to Flo, laid flat on a paddleboard that had washed up to shore. A little girl, just a toddler, sat upright in the shallow water. She was wearing 2 armbands, but one had deflated. The gentle waves kept pushing her over, but she sprung back up, a loose tooth unsteady but clinging into place. Flo kicked off her shoes and let her toes sink into the sand. She pulled out a bottle of sun lotion from her tote bag and applied it to her bare arms and legs, careful not to get it on the plaster covering her left ankle. She dried her hands on the towel, then pulled off the plaster. No need to hide it anymore. The bite mark had swollen since yesterday, but she could still make out the dental impression of the old man in her ankle. It reminded her of the clay impressions she'd had made for her braces a few months prior. She sighed, then laid back on the sunbed. It was stupid. She was stupid. She'd gone and gotten herself bitten and ruined everything. 2 swallows danced in the sky. Flo watched as they flew out to sea toward the island. Flo closed her eyes, her mind spinning. I had no choice. I had to run away. I couldn't let them see me like this. She tried to focus on the sounds. The fizz of the sea foam, the rise of the crickets, the chirp of the birds, the soft groans of the undead. Flo drifted to sleep. When Flo woke, the shadows were stretched long across the sand, and the sound of the crickets had died back. Flo glanced at her ankle. Her stomach twisted. Dark purple veins had formed around the wound. She traced them with trembling fingers, her chest tightening. Not long now. I'm sorry, Flo whispered, tears forming in her eyes. I didn't mean for this to happen. She pulled the towel from under her and wrapped it over her shoulders. She hugged her knees to her chest, shivering despite the lingering warmth. Everything ached. Ached like it did when she'd had the COVID vaccine last autumn. She pictured herself as a zombie, imagining her eyes turning gray and wandering about aimlessly. She imagined seeing her parents and seeing the pain and horror on their faces when they recognized her. Then she imagined her younger brother, his eyes lighting up when he saw her, too young to understand. She reached out to him, as if to hug him, but instead pulled him close and opened her mouth to bite. No. Stop it. Flo stood up, staggering to the water's edge. I can't let that happen. I won't. She went over to the paddleboard. She tipped it, letting the body of the boy slip into the water. She climbed onto the board, her hands shaking as she picked up the paddle. The sea stretched out before her, painted in hues of pink and orange, and on the horizon was the island. She pushed off, letting the board drift from the shore. This was where she was meant to go all along. She knew this now. To the island. It's going to be okay, she whispered to the waves. The island loomed ahead, its rocky cliffs sharp against the twilight sky. Gulls cried overhead, their calls echoing across the water. I can't hurt them now. When the world went gray, joy, happiness, life, creation, the spark of beginning, the heartbeat of Earth itself, the endless manifestation of color and beauty and light blossoming, growing, unfurling into something infinite. And then, one day, nothing. The world, once bursting with radiance, was swallowed whole, devoured by an oblivion so complete that even memory faded to grayscale, leaving behind only the cruel, inescapable taunt of black and white, a silent mockery of what once was, shadows of what had been clung to the charred land beyond our shelter, reaching with desperate fingers toward a sky that had long since turned its back. And as the relentless nothingness took and took and took, we were left only to bear witness, to suffer in the empty remains of what we had destroyed. And as the world faded to monochrome, I became one of the countless shades of despair. Our city, once flooded with bustling citizens driving cars of every color, is reduced skeletal frames of buildings and cracked roads. A cruel reminder of the countless nights I spent, sleepless, hidden away in my attic, thriving off the colors coating my paint palette. The word around us hasn't just been burned, it's been erased, the vibrancy stripped away. I look around our underground shelter, and for people struggling to survive, everyone was perfectly content with making conversation from the concrete where they sat, as if they weren't on their deathbeds. We scrape by with the rations the leaders distribute weekly, our bodies weakened by hunger, our minds fractured by the unbearable monotony of a world without color. But it isn't the hunger or paranoia that haunts us, but the weight of absence, the memories of color fading with each passing, dissolving to add to the torture of the ash flakes contaminating the air. Black, white, gray, repeat, every damn time. And then I find myself thinking the same, though I thought, since the day the world was drained of color. This is a dream. Colors can't just disappear. And yet, here we were in this mere sketch of what was. A vast land that stretched on through the remains of the nuclear tragedy, colored in shades of ash and bone, where nothing grows and nothing dares to blossom. For now, I resort to my only escape, my eyelids suddenly feeling too heavy, my mind too weary. Symptoms we've long since accepted as the norm, and allow myself to relax against the concrete wall. Part 1. Rations are low. Too low. A small group of us was sent into the depths of our despair to scrounge together enough food to ensure our, at the least, survival. Survival doesn't always grace the entirety of our measly society, and it's unfortunate. But death, even at 17, is not an unfamiliar fate. I look out into the rubble, finally lifting my eyes from my sneakered feet, for the first time since they stepped beyond the shelter's entrance. The land is silent. The only sound, the crunching of boots landing against who knows what. And the whipping wind nipped at my skin, scattering my once auburn-streaked hair across the back of my jacket. Black, white, gray. A gleam catches my eye. We're at the edge of the ruins. That's impossible. My feet are already betraying me. Already venturing closer to this foreign feeling of freedom. 5 years ago was the last time I was graced with the presence of color. 5 years since the bombs. 5 years since this world was diminished to a mere grayscale. 5 years. For color to still exist would be out of the question. I track the glistening spar of hope, forcing my eyes to stay open, forcing my feet one in front of the other, until, where'd it go? I blink. Scanning the scene, my eyes dart frantically from each piece of colorless scrap to the next. Come on. Come on. Nothing. The unmistakable feeling of wilted grass prickles at my knees as they hit the ground where it was. The hope of color in an achromatic world slipped through my hoary fingers like sand slipping through the grasp of the ocean spray continuously. Elara? Sienna, one of the other young scavengers, asked, kneeling down in front of me. You okay? I blink back tears I didn't know were welling, forcing composure I don't have, even as I feel the feather-light touch of Sienna's hand on my shoulder. I know I can tell Sienna the truth. She did take me in after the bombs killed my parents, but to burden her would be to break myself in the process. Yeah. My voice is breathy, as if I'm questioning my own answer, while letting the first one that comes to mind slip past my lips. If anyone is going to believe me, it's going to be her. She is the only family I have left, after all. I thought I saw color. Sienna's muted, but still striking. Once blue eyes go wide, clawing to clench onto the sliver of hope, and clinging onto it like a lifeline. Anything, everything. She leans closer, the shoulder-length ashy hue filling her head, now slipping past her ear. If anyone can find it, it's you. She said it like it was the easiest thing in the world. But that was just the way Sienna made everything seem. Easy. Like it wasn't the sight reignites a desperate hope, a longing to believe that life, in its fullest form, is not truly gone. Part 2. I can't pretend like it didn't happen. I can't unsee it. I know it's risky. I know there are people here who need every last bit of help they can get. But if there's a better, beautifully vivid world out there, inching to be found, it needs to be found. So here I am, in the thick, inky embrace of the dead of night, my fingers curling tightly around the worn, chilled rungs of the ladder that stretches upward like a fragile, rust-bitten bridge to a world I have long since sworn, with every fiber of my being, to unravel, to tear apart piece by piece if that's what it takes, all in pursuit of that elusive, flickering glint, something small, something distant, something that once dared to catch and hold the fleeting light of a bleached and weary sun. Because if there is one truth I refuse to let slip through the cracks of time, it is that color, in all its wild, untamed brilliance, is not just an indulgence, not merely an ornament to be admired from afar, but a necessity, a lifeblood that the world not only craves, but deserves to be drenched in, to be wholly consumed by. And if it is within my grasp to bring it back, to pry it from the hands of whatever force dares to smother it, then I will chase it, seize it, and deliver it without hesitation, no matter the cost. Singed, sealed, delivered. Address: a monochrome world once called Earth. Surrounded by rubble, I step out into the spotted sky and let the chill of a rare wind smack me right in the face, a stark contrast to the warmth seeping across my chest. I shake my head at myself and how I utterly disregarded the warnings of the other survivors, and so effortlessly snuck out of the security of our shelter into the wasteland so eagerly. I glance around the land stretched out before me, waste crowding the ground and ashes polluting the air, and I swear the hues of gray, now illuminated by stars and a moon, that appeared as dots and a waning semicircle, were darker than black, everything meshing with the ink-stained sky. I will find it. I'll find it if it kills me. I will. Then, just beyond the endless stretch of night, a shimmer, the faintest trace of warmth against the cold monotony. It's real, I murmur, though no one is around to overhear. It has to be. Part 3. I walk for hours, and it still feels like I've gone nowhere. I'm still surrounded by the gray void, still surrounded by remains of a better life, and still with the shimmering speck of hope before me, not stopping. The landscape is an endless graveyard of the past. Twisted steel, collapsed buildings, and roads that crack beneath my feet stretch on like the bones of a forgotten civilization. Everything is still. No birds cry overhead, no wind whispers through trees, because there are no trees left to whisper through. The silence is heavy, pressing against me like the weight of the sky itself. I huff, pressing my back against a crumbling door, not bothering to look at the house, but rather the swing set across the road, peering intently as it swings back and forth in the stillness of night, moved by something unseen. Perhaps the ghost of the child who cherished it. A sigh slips past my lips at the tempting offer of sleep, but refusing to give in quiet yet. I push my weight forward. My feet drag, weighing me down. Black, white, gray. Repeat. It's infuriating that I can't close the distance between me and my last hope of color. My eyes snag on a reflection in the road. My pace quickens. My footfalls echo in the empty, colorless world as I near the glinting surface. A mirror, cracked, dirt-speckled, abandoned in the middle of the road, like it doesn't belong. Like nothing belongs, I slow, breathing hard. My reflection stares back at me, distorted by the fractures spider-webbing across the glass. The same dull world is behind me. The same lifeless sky above. But beneath me, just beyond the cracks, something else, green, my breath catches. A patch of grass, impossibly vivid, bleeding through the reflection as if it exists in another world. As if it's real, somewhere, somehow. I step forward, heart pounding, kneeling at the mirror's edge. My fingers hover over the glass. The colors look too bright, too alive, like they'd burn if I touched them. But I don't hesitate. I kick the mirror. It shatters under my heel with a sharp, crystalline crack. Splinters of glass scatter across the road, glinting like stars in the empty light. I brace myself for something, anything. A shift in the air, a tremor in the ground, a door opening where there was none before. But when I look down, the green is gone. Just shards of broken glass, catching the darkened sky in their edges. Just my own reflection, fractured into 100 jagged pieces. I lurch forward, scraping at the road where the mirror used to be. Nothing. No hidden portal. No sliver of color left behind. My hands shake. Tears, clear wetness, drip down my cheeks in slowed fashion. My breathing comes in clipped gasps. I saw it. I know I did. The wind stirs, sending a few stray fragments skittering away. I watch them disappear down the road, swallowed by the nothingness stretching endlessly ahead. And then I keep walking, pushing harder, further, relentless. Part 4. I refuse to let myself stop. I won't. I can't. Not if I want any chance at finding the color I've recklessly craved. My eyes follow the path I left in the dust, the sun rising higher in the sky. And then, thunk, the ground hits me before I can brace for it. Pain shoots through my skull in sharp, electric volts. I glance up, dazed, and see the thick trunk of the tree I just slammed into. Its rough bark pressing into my chest, pinning me to the earth. I wince, trying to push myself up, but my head swims with dizziness. The tree stands tall, towering over me like an ancient sentinel, its branches casting long shadows in the early morning light. I can feel its strength, as if it's mocking my weakness, daring me to rise again. I press my palms to the ground, leaves crunching beneath them, and accept this tree's challenge. The rough earth presses against my skin, grounding me in this moment, daring me to rise. A chill runs through my spine as I push myself up, dirt clinging to my fingertips. The air is thick, damp, charged with something unseen but undeniable. Prepared to confront the tree, I stand to my feet and ball my fists, the tension in my body coiling like a spring. I'm ready. My knuckles tighten, breath steadying, until a sharp, almost imperceptible sting pricks at my palm. Crunch. My hand flattens instinctively, fingers twitching as I feel the sensation spread. The leaves, crisp and brittle, stick to my skin like they belong there. A brief annoyance flickers through me, and I almost brush them off without a second thought, until something stops me cold. The color, not gray, not black, not the dry, lifeless husks of darkness. These leaves are green. It's faint, fading, dying, but it's there. The realization steals the breath from my lungs. Green here, among the decay. Color still exists, but it is fading. The world is not truly black and white. It is dying in slow motion. The nuclear bombs did not erase color. It severed life's connection to it, leaving only those who remember it to witness its vanishing. A smirk, one I haven't worn since the day of the bombs, breaks across my lips. It all makes sense. I have to find the color. I have to find the, what about everyone else? What about Sienna? I cut myself off, bending to gather a handful of dull leaves from the ground. Sienna would want this. If anyone can find it, it's you. My grip on the leaves tightens, as if I can hold on to her words, onto her, for guidance, like I always have. And I intend to do just that. One step. For hope, another. For faith, 2 steps. For a new life, another. For Sienna. And then I'm sprinting, not daring to look back. In our blood, can expect heavy thunderstorms from 9 p.m. to 3 a.m. Chris's radio buzzed as he trundled down the exit to the rest stop. Windshield wipers working overtime as the rain and wind pelted his semi. He would have to wait out the storm, lest he risk ending up in a ditch. All the better for me, he thought to himself as he pulled up to the truck stop. I can finally look for someone to play with. Chris had been a trucker for years, enjoying the solitude of the road and the freedoms it granted him. Were he to succeed at his goals, he would need space and quiet. His roots offered him just that. Nobody had caught on to him yet, though the news was always warning potential victims away from hitchhiking. He was a legend along I-80, killing travelers and truckers alike. He climbed out of his truck, hurrying inside the rest stop as the rain poured. The place was completely dead. Chris sighed, cursing his bad luck. First the storm, and now nobody around to play with. He was going to have to keep moving, wasn't he? His fingers itched to grasp a life by the throat, to tear it apart piece by piece until there was nothing left but red. It had been too long since he had had free rein. He thought back to his last hunt. He had snuffed out a college kid whose car had broken down on the side of the road. Some freckle-faced loser whose name he didn't even remember. That kid had put up a good fight, but he was no match for Chris. None of them were. He grinned to himself. He would find someone to play with soon enough. The sound of the rest stop doors banging open startled him, and he turned to find two sopping wet figures shaking themselves dry in the entryway. They looked young and weak, Chris noted, with a wolfish grin. Perfect. What are you boys doing out here all alone? Chris called out, watching his prey with barely concealed bloodlust. The young men eyed him warily. One of them stepped forward, standing between Chris and his friend. It's not safe out there in the rain. Our car broke down, the young man said quietly, voice meek and small. We need a ride. Can you help us, mister? Chris couldn't believe his luck. Where are you two headed? Chicago. Chris grinned, extending a weathered hand for the boy to take. We'll head out when the rain has let up a bit then, he said, introducing himself. My name is Chris. What do I call you two? I'm Matthew, the boy who shook his hand said. And I'm Sam, the other said warily. They were perfect for Chris in every way, soft and unassuming. Well, Matthew, Sam, do you two need something to eat? I can get you something at the vending machines. No thanks. Matthew shook his head. He would be a difficult one, wouldn't he? We're okay. The trio sat in awkward silence for about a half an hour, waiting for the rain to let up. Chris fidgeted where he sat, watching the two young men, impatient. He supposed he didn't have to wait for the rain to let up completely. Wanna head out? He asked, standing. I don't think waiting around here is gonna do us much good. The rain is supposed to continue almost all night. All fine by me, Matthew sighed, helping Sam to his feet. After you, mister. Chris led them through the pouring rain and towards his truck, helping them up into the cabin. Thunder boomed overhead, a sinister soundtrack for what was about to come. Chris got Matthew and Sam situated and then pulled out of the rest stop, heart soaring with anticipation. So what's in Chicago? Chris asked, looking over at Matthew. Family? Friends? A new start, Matthew said quietly. expression tense. I don't want to talk about it. Perfect, Chris thought. They're runaways. Fair enough. I won't make you talk if you don't want to. Where are you headed? Sam asked. The first thing he had said the entire time he was in Chris's truck. Are you going to Chicago too? Nah, Chris dismissed. I'm headed for the East Coast. Raleigh. Not anymore, Chris gasped as Matthew reached across the center console, wrestling the steering wheel out of his grip and sending them veering off the road. Chris swore as his trailer swung off of the road, rending metal screeching as sheets of rain cascaded down upon them. What the hell was this kid's problem? Rage built in Chris's chest as the semi came to a shuddering halt, firmly lodged in the drainage ditch. You're ours now, Matthew hissed as he stuck Chris in the neck with something sharp and stinging. He could feel the fight leave his body as Matthew and Sam dragged him out of the truck and into the ditch. What were these kids? Chris struggled against his captors, but whatever they had drugged him with was making it hard to coordinate his limbs. He was so tired. Sammy, Matthew hummed as he brushed Chris's rain-matted hair off of his forehead. He can be yours. Happy birthday. Sam grinned wildly, the flicker of light against a blade catching Chris's eye as he lay paralyzed in the mud and grass. These kids were like him, he realized. He had fallen victim to his own game. He coughed weakly as Sam's knife ghosted across his skin, stinging icy cold. He was completely at the mercy of those he was sure would have been his victims. You thought you could kill us, Matthew mused, gaze cold and calculating. Lightning split the sky with a resounding crack. We're not scared of the likes of you. Now, we get to have our fun. The wind screamed in Chris's stead as his captors took him apart. Oh, the irony of it all. Here he was, reduced to a mere plaything in the heart of the storm. He never should have stopped at that rest stop. Only once his frantic heartbeat had fizzled out did the fear finally leave him. He stared unseeingly into the pouring rain as the sky mourned his loss. Matthew and Sam disappeared into the night, not a trace left behind. The Federal Bureau of Investigation has issued a warning to travelers along I-80. Chris's radio buzzed as the semi lay abandoned in the ditch. Serial killings along the highway threaten lone truckers. Do not stop for hitchhikers and report anything suspicious to local authorities, neighbors. It's been so peaceful without tenants in Unit 37. Something about that apartment always attracts such surly people. Loud, rude, unneighborly. This used to be a community. Now it's more of a ghost inn. I liked going to the market first thing in the morning on Thursdays. That's when they deliver the fresh weekly stock, and all my favorite vendors know to save me their best batch. I didn't used to be able to afford this. Strange to think how now that I don't go to work, I am able to spend all this money. But life is in the little things, in plump figs, rich greens, and tomatoes that smell of being grown in sunny gardens. It's opportune that the school gave me paid leave, just like they did with the teachers. I thought they would send me to work in the next county while the school was renovated. I guess funding was improving. I cleaned up after dinner, freshened up, and went to bed. Or rather, the couch. I've gotten used to sleeping on it after long shifts, having to waitress for a while after work. Ends required meeting for a time, and I would just crash in the living room. Nowadays, it's more comfortable than ever, like a warm cocoon, ready to wrap me up, safe and sound each night. I finally slept like a baby. Then there was a bark, suddenly, in the middle of the night. Loud, sharp barking of a dog. It sounded so close, I thought he was right in the room with me. A cold chill ran throughout my body from how much it startled me. I felt my heart go cold. Must be what a surge of adrenaline feels like. I would have thought it would be a hot flash, but I felt frozen. Listening more carefully, I realized it was coming from Unit 37. I didn't see anybody move in. Why is there a dog? Am I hearing it wrong? Drowsiness was overtaking me again. Once my body realized it wasn't in imminent danger. Maybe it's for the best, I thought, and laid back down to sleep. It was a sunny August day. I've gone to feed the ducks at the park pond. It was only 10 a.m., but the heat was already scorching. Right at the entrance of my old, derelict-looking building, I've come across them. 2 strong men in white polo shirts, carrying boxes inside. Movers. I didn't speak to my neighbors. Or they didn't speak to me, really. It's useless being friendly to faceless people who look through you. Everyone has enough on their minds to care about anybody else if they can help it. So I don't know anybody here anymore, and I don't mind if it stays like that. At least there was no ruckus. Nobody made problems. I can live with that. As I climbed the stairs to my 4th floor, I saw that my assumption was right. There were a few empty units that anybody could be moving into. Of course, it had to be the Unit 37, right next to me. Then I heard it again. The piercing noise. Barking. Their door was open. The movers going in and out, diligently filling the space, I presume. And my mind seemed to fill just the same. Who were these people? Will the dog bark now, all the time, and disturb my peace? A young woman, maybe late 20s, with wavy brown hair appeared, with the dog on a leash, instructing the movers how she'll be back soon. She gave me a curt nod and swooshed beside me. All right, just the girl. Maybe she's a student, or just a young woman finding her feet on her own. If the dog keeps being loud, I'm sure she won't mind if I talk to her about it. It looked like a young dog. It could learn to behave. In the afternoon, everything changed. He came home, too. The boyfriend. I should have supposed that she had a boyfriend. She was young and beautiful. Why wouldn't she? Why he had to be insufferable that I had no answer to. Days that followed passed in turmoil. I am aware it sounds like an exaggeration. They had the right to move in there. They had the right to make life noises, to be. I was the one who had to endure it. I heard every step, every clink of the silverware, every bathroom visit, the TV, and the bedroom, and most of all, the arguments. I had the urge to go to the hardware store and ask to have my walls insulated. I think I could even afford it, but I kept thinking it would be too extreme. They were just a messy young couple. Nobody is perfect. I just wish I didn't have to witness it. On top of everything, it was the dog. If it wasn't for the dog, I think I could have gotten used to the other noises. But the damn animal barked all day and all night. Not all the time, obviously. Just enough to constantly remind you he was there, that they were there. What bothered me the most is that nobody seemed to care at all. As if nobody else in the entire 5-story building with over 30 units could hear him, except me. Did nobody else wake up at 3 a.m. each night when the damn thing shouted? That's how it sounded like, as if he was shouting at someone. Sometimes I had a feeling he was angry at the boyfriend, which is when I sympathized with the animal a bit. I, too, sometimes want to bark at the vile man, but who was he mad at in the middle of the night? When he barked at those times, it felt like he was angry at me, and I hated him for it. It was a Thursday. I have just gotten back from my farmer's market stroll. I never knew when they'd be home. They didn't seem to work a normal job. They'd be home at odd hours, and then gone at even stranger ones. Did they even work at all? Who paid for everything? They never seemed to argue about money. I could hear shouting from the corridors, climbing the stairs. The smell of weed was forever permeating the inside of the building. I detested the smell, but it was simply one more thing I just had to accept and learn to live with since they moved in. I've called the police 12 times in total so far. Loud music, partying, drugs, the dog. The police would come. They would get quiet and not answer the door. The police would leave. That was the extent of the law protection this country provided. Not that I put my faith in them. It was simply the only thing I could do. I tried ringing them, hoping to talk. He would curse at me through the door, and I would run back to my apartment. It was cowardly. At least that's how I felt when I did it. I just don't know what else to do. My entire existence was upended by them. They consumed me. My every waking moment, they made me think of themselves. They woke me up to remind me they were there. I had no escape, no peace, and there's always the dog. Sometimes, I think he must feel the same way I do. He too is trapped with them. He can't leave. He can't even pee if they don't feel like getting up and taking him outside. One time, I heard the boyfriend hit him. He must have done his business inside. I pitied him, and I hated him all the same. Today, the dial got turned up a notch. Maybe the pot of gold they've been living off of had run dry. Maybe she cheated. Maybe he had built enough frustration to take it out on her as well. Plates were shattering as I quickly unlocked my door. I dumped my things in the kitchen, and without thinking, on instinct, went to call the police. That's what I was hurrying to do, without even realizing. As it was ringing, I could hear her cry and beg him to stop. Stuff was flying, hitting walls and probably hitting her too. 911, what's your emergency? Yes? Hello? I'm calling about my neighbors. Ah, Ms. Mizzero. Is it the dog again? Excuse me? You are Miss Mizzero at Fair Corner 11, correct? Yes, I have you on record here. You have issues with your neighbors. So I only asked if it was the dog again. Isn't that neat? No, it is not the dog. Well, it's the human dog, that bastard of hers. He's beating her. I can hear it through the wall. He's hurting her. There's stuff flying all right, ma'am. We'll send someone over to check on the situation. There is nothing to check. You need to hurry. He's hurting her. He could kill her. Do you hear me? Yes, ma'am. I've already told you. I've sent someone over. Just sit tight and try not to worry. He hung up the phone. Besides a few doors opening to snoop and promptly closing when their suspicions were confirmed, nobody did anything. He continued to scream and hit her. She continued to sob and mumble. Was she explaining herself? Begging? Soothing him? I couldn't tell. Not by her words, at least. I just knew. I didn't even realize I'd been sitting at my dining table, clutching the phone, listening, that 3 hours went by. I got startled from my stupor by the doorbell outside, and I glanced at the clock, noticing the time. That's how long it took them. They were at their door. I wonder what they'll do if he doesn't open the door. Will they just walk away like they did all the other times? The lock clicked a few times, and I could hear her voice. I knew it to be hoarse, but to a stranger, she sounded normal, chirpy even. Sorry to bother you, miss. We had a complaint from a neighbor. They heard some shouting. It seemed like they were worried for your safety. Is everything all right? Really? Oh my. Well, I'm fine. I don't know what it could be. Oh my God. Yes. Oh no. I feel so bad. It's probably the dog. My boyfriend came home. He was away for a few days, and Loki got a little too excited. He's been jumping all over the place. So the dog was making the noise? Yes. Oh my God. Yes. I just remembered. He knocked over this vase right when Danny came home. Right, babe? Danny. I've never heard his name before. Doesn't suit him. He looked more like a Brad or Kyle. Hello? I thought it was the takeout. What's happening? I heard him ask the officer. We're just here to make sure everyone is all right here. There were some noise complaints. Oh my God, again? Some people really don't have a life of their own, do they? They all chuckled. The cop. Danny. The girl that was sobbing all afternoon. All laughing. At me. Well, I can see there's no problem here. Just try to keep the noise down at night. And don't let us spoil your afternoon. Have a good one, guys. She lied. What hurt the most was the familiarity of it. I remember lying, too. It seemed that, to the world, my lies were more believable than the truth. She was reminding me, I'm not the only one. They seemed to be more quiet after that. He left and came back late. She only went out briefly to walk the dog. The next day, I woke up with the intense urge to go to the park. I needed to see the pond. I dreamt of the water, the peaceful green vastness. My ducks. Do they remember me? I bet they would like anybody who brings seeds and lettuce, not just bread. I had to go to them. Gathering my things, I went to leave, locking up my door. She just got out too, at the same time. Our eyes locked. She looked swiftly away, but not soon enough. I saw the bruise covered by a thick layer of foundation. It was so ridiculously obvious, it made me think, did people really not see? Or did the covering up signal to them, it's okay, I want you to not care. I want you to not ask me about it. Look away. I couldn't look away, because I now knew. I was sure that cop knew too. Hello? Oh, hi, she answered reluctantly. Off for a walk? Yes. Sorry, by the way. Loki barks at night. I know. I can't get him to be quiet. He notices the pigeons sleeping on the ledges of windows and goes bonkers. Yes, we can talk about the dog, but we can't talk about the man. I'm going to the pond. I feed the ducks sometimes. Would you like to come with me? Oh, that's so sweet. But no, sadly, as I said, Loki only sees birds as snacks. She looked like a girl when she smiled. I see. I could come to tea later. If you're not busy, I'd be delighted. I remembered I had no tea at home. So instead of the pond, I went to the store to get some. The ducks can wait. I made them no promises. I sat around anxiously, waiting for her. Will we be honest? Will she even show? The doorbell rang. We sat, sipping my new rose and hibiscus tea. She chatted about looking for work. She had a degree in economics, a very male-dominated field. She didn't have any girlfriends. She was isolated. So much so, I gathered, that the loneliness made her befriend her strange, middle-aged neighbor who called the police on her all the time. So, your boyfriend works then? I pried. No, actually. He didn't go to school, so he has some savings from a previous job. We decided to live off of those while I look for a good job. We're thinking maybe when we have a family, I could then stay home and he would go back to work. That way, we both have some free time. You expect to have free time when you have a baby? I blurted. I shouldn't rock the boat. There was another, more pressing matter I wanted her to hear from me. I guess you're right. I hadn't thought of it that way. Well, however it ends up being, we're both unemployed for now. Why isn't he looking for a job, then? Same as you. I told you. He wants to have some free time while he can, to find himself. He did work his butt off for 4 years, you know. He earned it. Do you think he earned the right to do that, too? She instinctively covered up her cheek with her hand. You see it? Anyone with a pair of eyes can see it. He's not always like that, you know. He's actually really loving. And funny. He hits you. She paused. Yes, you know you need to leave him. I can't. He pays the rent. You'll find a job. You don't need him. I can't. I held her hand in mine. She jolted at my touch, yanking her hand away, with tears in her eyes, looking almost scared. I'm sorry. I don't mean to upset you. She just stared at me with a strange expression. I know I shouldn't be saying things like that. You don't know me, and you don't need advice from a woman you just met. Why are your hands so cold? It's so warm in here. My hands? I was perplexed by her question. That's what she's focusing on now? The temperature of my hands? The souk stared to bark from the inside of her apartment. She sighed. I should go. I think I even left the window open. One of these days, he'll actually catch a pigeon or something. Our discussion now completely deflected to unimportant matters once again. I had to let it go. All right. Tell Loki I said he needs to be a good boy. I will. The boyfriend must have come home, and the dog got out of their apartment. Before he could catch him, he ran inside my own as she went to leave. Loki, come back. They both went after him. Loki made a straight line for the door of my bedroom, barking insistently and pawing at the doorknob. They almost dragged him away when he made the final jump, opened it, and nosed his way in. He barked and barked and barked. I felt like it lasted for hours. I just kept watching the two, standing at the wide open double door, not turning to me, not calming down the dog. They just stood and stared. I walked slowly closer, with each step being more certain of what I'll find. Peace overcame me. Relief. Joy. I cackled. Full chest, lungs, and heart cackle. It was real. It was. It happened. I did it. They jolted at the sudden noise, finally turning to me. What did you do? She stuttered. The two blackened, withered figures could be seen on the once pristine bed. The one on the right wore my favorite outfit, my green dress, and my mother's dragonfly brooch. Loki, no doubt, found his kindred, too, by the closet. I did what I had to do. Finally, for a time, I got to be free. Tears escaped her eyes. "I'm so glad I got to meet you in the end," I told her. "I took my bag. I prepared earlier this morning. Take care." I smiled. "I think I'll go to the pond now." Yes, I'd like that. The painted door. For what feels like an eternity, I stare at the bloodied body without being able to move. It's sprawled at my feet, limbs flung wide open, limp, each arm and leg pointing in a different direction on the filthy cobblestone ground of the tiny, walled, dark, and abandoned courtyard. Above us, the moonlight and the sparks of stars flicker behind white clouds that slice through a deep blue sky, like ghost ships crossing distant, uncharted seas. The lairs of mythical creatures and fearsome leviathans. With my free hand, I grope blindly at my own stomach, applying pressure to the wounds, the deep cuts that tore through flesh and muscles during the fight. Warm, dark blood gushes between my fingers, trickling down my arm, soaking the inner sleeve of my shirt and jacket. A lantern shines through the fogged glass of a third-floor window in the adjacent building. I run and hide, crouching behind a bush. Clenching my teeth, I stifle a groan. "Who's there?" demands the gruff, weathered voice of an old man. Through the tangle of leaves, cloaked in shadows, I watch him. He wears a long, white cotton nightgown and a matching cap. One hand holds the open window, while the other grips the lit lantern. He squints and scans the courtyard, fixing his gaze on the body. Hey, you degenerate drunkard. Go die somewhere else, Satan. Shoo, shoo. He yells like this for a minute or two, then grunts, mutters a curse, shuts the window, and disappears along with the light inside the room. I lift my head and look around, peering through one of the gaps in the ancient stone wall into the street. Seeing no one, I seize the opportunity to leave the scene. I rise, pull myself over the wall, and slip into the narrow, winding cobblestone streets. I try to move quickly, but quietly. I fail at both. The wound slows me down, saps my strength, the precision of my movements, and wherever I pass, I catch the attention of horses tied to posts or hitched to carriages, and dogs guarding gardens and courtyards. The former neigh and snort, the latter bark, bare their teeth, and growl behind fences, stone walls, or the iron bars of gates. The streets are deserted, except for the animals, silent save for their sounds, the gusts of wind, the rustling of leaves, the creak of hinges on lonely shop and tavern signs swaying in the dim light, of the lanterns hanging from sparsely spaced posts along the paths. Only a few remain lit. I regret coming on foot, but at the same time, I know I had no choice. I couldn't risk having the coachman as a witness, and driving my own carriage alone would have raised too many suspicions. A rider draws far more attention than a man on foot. A man can move unnoticed, can hide at the first sign of danger, can leap over walls and slip through courtyards unseen, can climb walls and travel across rooftops. After a while, I stop feeling my legs, stop perceiving their movement. Despite my thick, fine clothes, I feel a terrible cold creeping up my spine, stabbing beneath my ribs, filling my chest and guts with dread. I collapse on my knees beside a wall and sit with my back against it in a dark alley, sheltered by shadows, trash, and foul smells. Just a minute, I think. I only need a minute if I allow myself 1 or 100. I can't say. But I wake startled when the clamor of sirens and bells reaches my ears. I've been discovered. They're after me. I bury the fingers of my free hand in the crevices of the wall, between the stones, and pull myself back onto my feet. I resume dragging myself forward, attempting to run. I stagger in zigzags, stumble and nearly fall, collide with posts, carriages, empty stakes, and walls, yet press on, one street at a time and one turn at a time, choosing the most crooked and darkest paths, cutting through back alleys, narrow lanes, and forgotten open courtyards. The dreadful symphony of the pursuit never seems far, but also doesn't gain on me as much as I fear. It follows me closely, always keeping the same distance, as if it were holding back for now. It is a macabre, inhuman sound, seemingly coming from nowhere and everywhere at once. I am about to turn a corner when I see the light, unlike any other I have ever encountered. It is not yellow or orange like the light of fire or lanterns. It is white, pulsating, alive, like sunlight itself. I stop, leaning against the wall of a building, mesmerized. The light crawls over the cobblestones like a living thing, formless and boundless. As it approaches, the colors of the lanterns, the animals, the stones, the ground, the walls, everything it is about to touch, fade away. It is as if the light is absorbing these colors, transforming objects into pencil sketches on white paper, like the ones I make before transferring my drawings in color to the canvases that I exchange for prestige, privilege, and fortune. Then the light swallows them, sucks up the colorless drafts as well, consumes them as if it were an immense, infinite mouth. the mouth of God, reclaiming into cosmic oblivion the living and the dead of this world. Behind the blinding curtain, the world disappears, ceasing to exist in a way that defies both physics and human intellect. Slowly, the light moves forward, a white void, smooth and shapeless, transforming what once was into nothingness. It is at that moment that the bells and sirens grow louder and closer, unbearably near. I look around and then start running again. I cross the intersection, with the light devouring the finite world to my right, and follow the street perpendicular to its advance. In a desperate attempt to lose my pursuers, I turn corners at random, sometimes left, sometimes right, zigzagging northward. My twists and turns are not always aimless. At times, I am forced to turn here and there, or backtrack when the wall of light appears just a few steps ahead of me, burning my eyes and rushing to envelop me. I shield my face behind my free hand and dive into the first available path to the right or left, or pivot on my heels and retrace my steps to the previous crossroads. Thus, I conquer the paved streets and the dirt roads, crossing the mile-long stretch that separates the town from my private hill and the mansion crowning it. I pass through the garden gates and rush to the front door. The guards and other staff still awake at this hour are startled, surrounding me, offering to help me walk, to carry me to a bed, a chair. They inquire about my injury, whether they should send a rider to fetch the physician from the village. I command them all to step back, to leave me alone, ordering that every door and window be sealed. For a brief moment, I work alongside them in this endeavor, but then I turn and make my way down the corridors to the bedroom. I kneel by the side of the massive canopy bed and touch Maria's warm face as she sleeps in peace and oblivion, undisturbed by the banging of doors, the shouted exchange of orders, or the music threatening to unravel my perfect world. The clamor of that million-strong chorus of sirens and bells. Gently, I wake her and help her to her feet. Quickly, my love, come with me. You must come with me, I whisper urgently, pulling her by the hand. She follows, trembling, crying, asking about all that blood, about the injuries, and the blood, the blood, the blood. So it was all over, then. Had I won? Were we finally free to live our love, no longer bound by escapes, lies, persecutions, or consequences? I pull her by the hand through the corridors to my studio. Along the way, I grab one of the lanterns hanging from rings fixed to the stone walls. I enter, pull her inside, and lock the door behind us. Frantically, I fly from one side of the room to the other, ensuring all other entrances and windows are shut as well. I move unsteadily, stumbling, pushing aside finished paintings, knocking over empty easels, unfinished canvases, and tables cluttered with papers, palettes, jars of paint, and brushes. Once convinced that every possible entry is sealed, I return to Maria, grasping her hand again, and lead her toward one of the walls. I scour the floor for a brush and a jar of paint. When I open the first jar, I find inside a solid, useless, gray lump. I hurry around the room, gathering more jars, only to find them equally futile. I try using the paint from the palettes, attempting to make it at least pliable with saliva. But to no avail, I find myself clutching a dry, useless brush, turning helplessly in place, sobbing, groaning in pain. Then I remember the wound, the blood. I return to the wall, grip trembling, inconsolable and bewildered Maria's hand. Dip the brush into my own wound, pulling it out with bristles drenched in blood, dripping red. Together, we approach the wall, and I begin to work. The bells and sirens grow ever closer, unbearably close, now just outside the corridor, sounding in neighboring rooms. With desperate and vigorous strokes, I paint a door, a doorknob, our only escape route. In my mind, I paint on the other side the perfect world, the perfect life, the happy ending we deserve. I squeeze Maria's hand a little tighter. I let the brush slip from my sticky, blood-soaked fingers, falling with a muffled thud beneath the cacophony of sirens and bells. I close my eyes and take a deep breath. With my free hand, I reach toward the doorknob and grasp nothing. No, this can't be. I open my eyes and try again, this time keeping them wide open. Around us, the bells and sirens engulf the world, drowning out every other sound and voice. I try to scream, but no sound comes out. I look around, over my shoulder. From every corner of the studio, through the cracks in the windows and doors, the white, deadly light, that devouring force, seeps into the room. It stretches through gaps between boards and under the passages, swallowing colors, easels, brushes, canvases, and loose sheets of paper. I turn to Maria for one last embrace, but there is no time to know if the movement is completed or if the light is faster, extinguishing us before our farewell can come to fruition. I wake up with my head pounding, the bells and sirens exploding within my temples, and then the music begins to make sense. It sounds familiar, and I realize it is not composed of actual bells or sirens. Blindly, I stretch my arm to the side, fumbling for my phone on the nightstand, and turn off the alarm. I squint at the blinding white light of the sun streaming through the window of my small room at the foot of my bed. Instinctively, still shrouded in the fog of dreams, I touch my stomach, searching for wounds, only to find it unscathed. Afterward, I get up, wait for the occupant of room 23 to finish their shower, take mine, get dressed, fill my travel mug with coffee in the kitchen on the ground floor of the pension, and rush to the bus stop a block away. Exactly at 7:45 a.m., I knock on the side door of the cafe where I work, located in the food court on the second floor of the Central Mall. William, the grumpy and bald manager, lets me in with a scowl and a grunt. I promptly put on my apron over my uniform, wear my cap, and take up my position. By 8:00 a.m., we are open and running full steam. At 8:17 a.m., Maria arrives. My sweet, small, slender, blonde, and gentle Maria with blue eyes. It's Thursday, and as usual, she is accompanied by her husband. He looks different in 21st century clothes, free of blood, with both eyes intact and without fatal gashes across his neck. They hold hands as they stand in line. At 8:22 a.m., they are in front of me, smiling and politely placing their order while they speak and smile, and I absent-mindedly jot down their requests. I see through the space between their bodies and heads, across the food court, into the art studio on the other side. At once, even from that distance, my eyes find the painting that captivated me 3 days ago. Among the dozens of canvases and easels displayed in the windows, a couple holding hands before a door painted on a wall. The man, clearly a celebrated artist from the 18th or 19th century, still clutching a brush wet with paint. And the door. That door. That door. And that freedom. And that door. And suddenly, they could go anywhere they wanted to, could love each other and be happy wherever they pleased, as much as their hearts desired, in any place they chose, and nothing else could follow them. Not through that door. Nothing beyond them would be able to cross it. Certainly, nothing bad or evil. I finish jotting down their order. We exchange pleasantries, and the couple turns their back on me. Maria turns her back on me, taking a seat at one of the tables with her husband. The two share a brief kiss, a tender smile. Clearing my throat, I call out in a loud and steady voice, "Next!" And the line moves, and life goes on around here. Storm of duality. Not again. Not so soon. Margaret's whisper carried over the silence of the house. With a fierce grip, she bit her remaining fingernail, tearing a piece off and causing the skin to bleed. Margaret stood at the window as the sky brooded, thick with the weight of an impending storm. dark clouds churned in slow agony, twisting and folding over themselves as if writhing in torment. This storm, she knew, would continue for days. Long, agonizing days. A sharp gust of wind rattled the glass, and she flinched. The leaves outside skittered like restless spirits, whispering secrets she didn't want to hear. The first patter of rain kissed the roof, soft, almost deceivingly gentle. She, however, saw through the deception. Soon, the downpour would come. The sky would open, and the world would drown in its sorrow. She pressed a trembling hand to her forehead. It was happening again. The slow, creeping descent. The shift within herself that she feared most. Margaret felt strangely linked to the storm. A tether that bound her to its fury, its anguish. As the clouds thickened and the thunder rumbled low in the distance, something inside her twisted. The familiar chasm in her mind yawned open, and she felt herself slipping into it. Her childhood marked her first awareness of this connection. A violent thunderstorm had raged outside, and she had found herself gripped with a restless, frantic energy. It was as though the storm had crawled inside her and filled her veins with its electric charge. Her mother had found her hours later, curled in a corner, whispering to herself. "It's not me," she had murmured over and over. "It's not me." Adulthood brought no change to that feeling. The storm, the darkness, the shifting inside her. Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. That's how it felt. Two selves coexisting in fragile balance until the storm tipped the scale. A peal of thunder cracked across the sky, and she clenched her hands into fists. The rain was coming harder now, sheets of it hammering against the house with merciless force. The wind howled, shaking the trees, their skeletal branches clawing at the sky. As she moved from the window, the walls felt like they were closing in, the shadows distorting her sense of reality. She reached for the kettle with unsteady hands, trying to focus on something tangible, something real. But her fingers fumbled, and the kettle clattered to the floor with a deafening crash. Margaret gawped, stumbling back and slamming into the counter. The impact sent a jolt through her body, but it was nothing compared to the dread twisting inside her. The storm's grip extended beyond the world outside. It clawed at her very mind, unraveling her sanity, thread by thread. She could feel herself fracturing, her thoughts splintering under the immense pressure, as if something dark and insidious lurked just beneath the surface, waiting for the perfect moment to take control. The whispering started then, not from outside, not from the wind, but from within her own head. Just surrender. It will be easier. She squeezed her eyes shut, rocking her head. No, why fight it? You know this is who you are. She pressed her hands to her temples. Her breathing was increasing, like the thunder and lightning. Her ears were buzzing, overpowering the storm itself. Margaret sensed her body was detaching from itself, like her reality was crumbling to the floor. It was the storm inside her, the darkness waiting to consume her. Another crack of thunder split the sky, and a bolt of lightning illuminated the house in a stark, white flash. Margaret reconnected with her body again and felt the surge through her veins, like she poked a fork in a light socket. She glimpsed at herself in the kettle's reflection. Her dilated eyes, the size of marbles, and her pale, almost unrecognizable face stared back at her. Then she realized the storm had taken her. She staggered backward, her hands clutching at the edge of the counter. She needed to hold on, to ground herself. She didn't want to become that person. Darkness prompted unthinkable actions. It whispered to her, feeding her fears, twisting her thoughts until right and wrong blurred together. It promised relief, power, an escape from the suffocating weight of reality. But she knew the cost. She had seen it before, felt it claw at her mind, urging her to surrender. Her fingers gripped the counter tighter, nails biting into the surface. She had to resist. She fought despite the overwhelming urge to give up. Letting go felt incredibly tempting. To release pent-up emotion, to embody the storm's will. She could feel the power coiling in her chest, raw and untamed. Another roar of thunder, another crash of rain. The wind shrieked, rattling the windows as she thought they might shatter. Margaret let out a strangled sob. "Please, stop." But storms don't listen. Their anger is unrestrained, and they destroy. Tears burned fiery trails down her cheeks. She staggered forward, pressing her forehead to the cool glass of the window. The rain distorted the world outside, turning everything into an indistinct blur. Just like her mind, she had to hold on. She had to be strong and fight. With a trembling breath, she forced herself to move, to step away from the window. She grabbed the kettle from the floor and set it back on the stove, the simple motion anchoring her. She filled it with water, her fingers still shaking, but moving with purpose. The dizziness was overpowering her, while vibrations pulsate at her temples, and brief electrical shakes interrupted her thought process. She would endure the storm, both outside and within. But what awaited on the other side? Would she emerge unscathed? Or would the tempest leave its mark, reshaping her in ways she could never undo? Having put the kettle back on the counter, Margaret closed her eyes and breathed deeply. She made her way to the special place, the soundproof area, with images of forests, waterfalls, and seascape. She made sure it was stocked with water, nuts, and protein bars. This served as her refuge, untouched by inner or outer turmoil. Here, seemingly serene, she escaped chaos. Briefly rediscovering herself, Margaret cast a final glance at the furious storm, its howls clawing at the windows like a desperate specter. As she forced the door shut, the latch clicked into place, a thin barrier between her and the chaos beyond. Yet, just before the silence settled, the storm's final utterance slithered through the cracks, a venomous whisper threading into her mind. "You can never escape me. I'll always be with you." A tremor ran down her spine, but she clenched her fists, grounding herself. The storm could rage, it could scream, but she refused to let it claim her. Not tonight, and for tonight, that was enough. Gridlock of the mind. The 405 stretched endlessly before me, a vein of asphalt pulsing with the dull monotony of brake lights. Every morning, I merged into the current of half-conscious souls, each of us trapped in the same routine, inching forward to destinations we resented. My corporate job barely paid my bills, and my spirit eroded with each passing day. Yet, like a prisoner resigned to their cell, I got into my car every morning, hoping, futilely, that something, anything, would change. Today felt no different. The same stifling air, the same murmur of the radio, the same dull ache pressing behind my eyes. I stared ahead, watching as the red taillights blinked and glowed in a never-ending pattern, hypnotic in their rhythm. I sighed, my hands gripping the wheel. This wasn't life. This was something else, some cruel purgatory where change was an illusion. As I drove, a strange sensation washed over me, an unsettling tug at the back of my mind. It was faint at first, like the nagging feeling of forgetting something important. My fingers tightened around the steering wheel. Had I left the stove on? No, I hadn't cooked in days. My laptop? No, it was in my bag, thrown onto the passenger seat in my usual morning autopilot. Then what? My phone rang, vibrating against the plastic cup holder. The number flashed on the screen. Unknown, but I knew better. Bill collectors. I clenched my jaw before answering, already bracing myself. "Hello?" A voice on the other end rattled off my name, their tone all business, all demand. "We're calling about your outstanding balance." I exhaled sharply, my frustration boiling over. "Do you think I don't know that? Do you think I just forgot? I'm sitting in traffic, wasting my life away every single day to make barely enough to survive. And you think I magically have money for you? Tell me, how am I supposed to pay you when I can't even afford to live?" Silence. A pause. Then the collector launched into their script again. As if my words meant nothing, I hung up. Hard. The phone clattered onto the seat, and I turned the music up. Loud. A mix of music and Spotify affirmations played in an endless loop. You are strong. You are capable, a voice repeated. But the words felt hollow against the weight pressing down on me. I switched back to music, something loud enough to drown it all out. But after a few minutes, I found myself back on the affirmations, searching for something, anything that might stick. You are in control of your life, the voice insisted. I scoffed, flipping back to music again. The bass thumped through my chest, rattling through my bones, drowning out the rage, the helplessness, the crushing weight of it all. I shook the feeling off and pressed forward. But the thought gnawed at me, creeping into the corners of my mind like an itch I couldn't scratch. The traffic slowed, locking me into a dead stop between exits. I drummed my fingers against the wheel, the silence growing unbearable. Something was wrong. Something was missing. The air inside the car felt heavier now, oppressive. I adjusted my rearview mirror and caught a glimpse of my own eyes, shadowed and hollow. Was it always this way? Was I always this way? The weight of exhaustion bore down on me. My limbs felt heavier than they should. Had I slept enough last night? Had I ever slept enough? I closed my eyes, taking slow, steady breaths. But when I opened them, the scenery outside seemed different. The colors muted, the sounds dampened. My vision blurred for a moment before snapping back into focus. But the creeping unease remained. I was losing time. One moment, I was at the interchange, and the next, I was pulling into the parking garage beneath my office building. My heart pounded as I stepped out of the car, my legs unsteady, as if I had forgotten how to walk. The air felt wrong, too thick, too still. I moved through the lobby, the fluorescent lights above buzzing softly, pressing against my skull like a dull migraine. The elevator doors slid open, and I stepped inside. The mirrored walls reflected me back at myself. And for a fleeting moment, I saw something else. A blur. A shadow of someone who wasn't quite me. I blinked, and it was gone. The doors opened to my floor, and I walked down the sterile hallway, my footsteps muffled against the carpet. My hands were cold, my breath shallow. My mind screamed at me to turn back, to run, but my body moved forward, as if caught in the undertow of a dream. I reached my office door, hesitated, then turned the knob. The room was dark. The air smelled of familiarity, of something deeply personal. My breath hitched, as I took a step inside, and the walls expanded, morphing, shifting. No, I wasn't at the office. I was home. My bedroom lay before me, unchanged and untouched, as if I had never left. My unmade bed, the half-empty coffee cup on my nightstand, the soft hum of the city outside my window. I stumbled backward, my heart hammering. How? I had driven here. I had spent an hour in traffic. I had been walking into my office just moments ago. I turned, reaching for the door, but when I opened it, there was no hallway, just the same road, the same endless stretch of the 405. My hands trembled as I turned back toward my room, only to find it dissolving around me, slipping through my fingers like sand. And then I was back in my car. Traffic had barely moved. The radio played the same mindless chatter, and the clock on my dashboard blinked mockingly. 7:45 a.m., just like it always was. I let out a shaky breath, gripping the wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. My skin felt cold. My pulse raced. What was real? Where had I been? And then the realization hit me. I was late. I was still home. Still in bed. Still asleep. The panic rose, clawing up my throat as I fumbled for my phone, desperate to check the time, to wake myself up. But when I looked down, my hands weren't there. The car, the traffic, the drive, it wasn't real. I never left my bed. I was still dreaming, or living a nightmare over and over. Rancor, burning, running down the train's aisle. Sable had to try her best to avoid people. Unfortunately, she had to push some people out the way, praying to whoever was listening that she hadn't hurt them. That's not what she wanted. She took one quick moment to look back, only to see the strange man in black still chasing her. Letting out a frustrated groan, she moved her focus back to the path in front of her, fast enough to see the upcoming obstacle, the dinner cart. Every afternoon at 1 p.m., one of the staff members would bring around the lunch cart. Sable was many a time excited to see this, but today was a different story. It now stood between her and her life. God damn it! She had to think fast, looking to the sides she thought about, maybe climbing the seats, but she thought better of it. It would take too long to scramble over them. No, the only way was over the cart. Someone was definitely going to get hurt this time. The lady that was serving lunch bent down to get something for someone from under the trolley. This was her chance. She placed her first foot on the poor lady's back, shouting an apology as shocked gasps were let out around her. Her other foot landed steadily on the top of the cart, jumping down. She landed on 2 feet, but wobbled forward, steadying herself on the arms of the chairs in front of her. but she knew she couldn't stop. Looking back again, she noticed the man in black was now fighting with people beyond the cart, smiling to herself, knowing this would but her. Sometime she kept going. When she got to the connecting door, she frantically pushed the release button. The door whizzed open. Scrambling inside, relief flooded her body when the door sealed behind her. It was only when she turned that she found herself in an empty carriage. Panic set in again when she realized that there was nowhere to hide in here. She knew her only option was to make it to the next carriage and hope to everything good that there would be somewhere to hide in there. But Sable only made it halfway to the door when the whole train jerked violently. So much so that it threw her off balance and she stumbled to the floor. To make matters even worse, as she was starting to stand up, all the lights completely shut out. Her first thought was that the energy field that kept the train safe out here in space had failed. If she wasn't terrified before, she was now for a completely different reason. Hearing the whiz of the door that she had just come through, she spun around to face it. But the darkness of the carriage was too much for her to even see her hand in front of her face, squinting as if that would make it easier for her to see. A white, hot flash lit up the entire carriage. It was only a second, but she could hear the strange man's hurried footsteps coming towards her. She knew she had to move forward as quickly as she could. Without knocking herself out, she felt for the sides of the carriage. She listened and heard the footsteps stop. Now the only sound was heavy breathing from both parties. She didn't know what to do. Her mind was racing too fast. She could make a run towards where she thought the other door was to the joining carriage. But what if she tripped or ran into something? Then the strange man in black would definitely know where she was. Just like before, there was a 1-second flash of hot white light. She caught a glimpse of the man who now stood in front of her, in the middle where she was once stood. Although this time he was facing the wrong way, and so, luckily, he didn't see where she was this time. Lightning. That's what the flashes were. It must have been a power surge that had stopped the train. At least, that was one less thing to worry about. This was like a nightmare. And just when she thought it couldn't get any worse, a red glow of the emergency lights just above Sable's head flashed on her face. She couldn't move. She was frozen in place, like a statue. He would surely see her now. She wished for the lights to go back out before he turned, but it was too late. Looking back, she saw the man was now staring right at her. The look on his face said everything that Sable needed to know. Panic set in again, and she tried to think of what to do, how to get out of this, but her brain was scrambled. The man started to charge, seeing her life flash before her eyes. And that's when it came to her. A month earlier, she had been running from the man in black for the first time. Ever since she had boarded the train at Lorth, she had felt like someone was watching her, which then had escalated to her finding out that someone was definitely following her. She had sneaked onto the train, more than ready to start her new life. 2 years ago, she had seen off her twin brother, Sky, and his partner, Jess, who were to travel to Rancor first. Sable had to stay behind to sort out some debts before she left Lorth, which was easier said than done. It was when she started to rank in more debts that she decided that she was done. She missed her brother, and so she would get on the light train no matter what. She tried to hurry down the aisle, but she didn't want to bring any more attention to herself than what she already was. Sliding into the first available seat she came across, she sunk into the fabric, trying to make herself as small as possible. She suitably looked back from the side of the seat to see a strange guy, all in black, stop at the threshold of the carriage, scanning every seat, but not moving forward. Running from someone? Turning quickly to where the voice had come from, she hadn't noticed that she had sat in one seat of 4 that had a table in the middle. A man was sat directly in front of her. He slowly put down the book that he had been reading. His hair was a lightish, mousy brown and shoulder length. Sable noticed it had a slight wave to it. "No, I just thought I heard the dinner cart." She tried a smile, but she was still out of breath from running. "Liar." The stranger leaned forward, placing both his elbows on the table that separated them. "You were running from someone. You tried to make it not noticeable, at which you failed miserably at. It was quite amusing, actually. Besides, the lunch cart only comes around at 1 p.m. sharp. Has done for the past 2 weeks we've been on this train." Sable squinted at the man as he smirked at her. She could have sworn that as he bared his teeth, she saw 2 fangs at either side. "So what are you going to do? We're only 2 weeks into our year-long journey to Rancor. You don't know how far you can run in this tin can. They're going to catch up with you soon enough." Sable looked to the side, trying to avoid the question. This was the first window Sable had come across on the train. Hiding in the luggage compartment, had no way to see outside, and she hadn't really had time to concentrate on her surroundings while running. She didn't know what planet they were passing, but it was beautiful. Past the energy field that surrounded the train, that shimmered of iridescent pinks and yellows. The massive planet just beyond them was a tan color. Its clouds were splodges of bright orange and dark pink. The ring that spanned around the planet was made of rock pieces that were all different shapes and sizes. Sable had to bring herself back to her reality. "I'll be fine." Looking around again, with panic streaming through her veins, she had forgot that the strange man was still looking for her. "Well, stranger, my name is Wilder, and I'm going to Rancor to start a new life of peace and hopefully happiness. How about you?" She was only half listening more focused on trying to wait for any opening she could so she could make a run for it. Just when she thought she would have to stay in the seat a bit longer, the man in black got distracted by something behind him. Getting up out of her seat, she went to pass the stranger that she had only just caught him saying his name was Wilder. She wasn't trying to be rude, but she had no time to make friends right now. But as she went to pass him, he grabbed her arm gently. "Look, I don't have time to chat right now. I'd appropriate it if you'd let me go." And so he did, going back casually to reading his book, but not without saying one last time, "Good luck. Whistle if you need any help." Confused at what he was implying, she knew she shouldn't be wasting this opportunity to run. Looking to check the man in black was still distracted, she finally took off down the rest of the carriage. She did it without even thinking, pursued her lips together. She whistled. The strange man who had started to lunge at her again stopped dead in his tracks, looking almost frightened. A look which faded almost instantaneously. She brought her right arm up to defend her face, but the blow never came. Lowering her arm, she looked around her to find the man in black was now crumpled in a ball at the far left wall. Light filled the carriage again, and it was like time stopped. "You whistled." The man that now stood in front of her, like a ghost, she remembered was named Wilder, the same one she had met about a month ago. "How did you—" "What? Never mind about that now." He grabbed her wrist gently and tugged her towards the door that led into the next carriage. "We need to leave before someone discovers he's dead." Wilder had dragged her through 2 carriages before she stopped him. They were now in what looked like a kitchen area, and her eyes went straight to a knife block that sat on the counter behind where Wilder stood. He turned to see what she was looking at. "Don't even think about it. I'm here to help you. Need I remind you, I just saved your life." He stood across from her, his hand raised and finger pointed at her like he was telling off a naughty child. "I wasn't. They just caught my attention, that's all." Wilder looked at her like he didn't believe a word she was saying. And to be fair to him, she couldn't blame him. They both leaned back on the counters, seeming to relax a little and to get their breaths back. "You never answered my question." She looked up at him. This was the first time she was actually taking his image in. He was tall and slim, but he had some muscle to him. He wore slim black pants and a tan, round-necked t-shirt that was covered by a black leather jacket. His eyes were what stood out the most to Sable, though. They were the lightest blue, with little specks of green in them. "Sable, my name's Sable, and I'm going to Rancor to reunite with my brother, Sky." Wilder gave her another wild smile, and once again she caught sight of fangs. He'd crossed his arms over his chest. "Wasn't so hard, was it?" Sable rolled her eyes and started to walk again. That was a thank you for saving my life. Everyone was gathered in carriages that were purely made of glass. Sable worked out fairly quickly that these rooms were made for passengers. First look at Rancor. It was an exciting event, looking at your future paradise for the first time. Sable and Wilder has spent the rest of the months on the light train, getting to know each other. He wasn't as bad as she first thought. He was funny and insightful, and after months of spending every day with him, she started to feel something for him. They both stood in the middle of the carriage. People crammed in around them. They were all waiting for the final jump. There was something I didn't tell you. Sable turned to Wilder, not expecting him to look so sheepish. What is it? I don't think the strange man in black was after you. Sable's eyebrows furrowed, and her head tilted when she spoke. What do you mean? She didn't understand. Why was he bringing this up now? They had rid themselves of that man many months ago. He was after me. He was a shadow stalker. Sable laughed. Shadow stalkers were something of legend. They hunted down and killed an ancient race of vampires. But all those stories were now like Chinese whispers. Ha, good one. But his face was still stone cold. She'd never seen Wilder like this. But vampires don't exist. Wilder, stop being silly. We're supposed to be having a good moment. They do exist. I do exist. Sable, unconsciously, took a step away from him, just as the light train jumped, and everyone around them started to cheer. But they were only looking at each other. Confusion crossed her face when she came to a realization. The fangs, when you smile. Wait. But if he was after you all this time, then why did it seem like he was always following me? Wilder tried to walk towards her, but Sable just took another step back. Because it was me who was following you, which in turn meant that he was only technically following you. Her breath started to quicken, but she was suddenly distracted by the intense orange glow that was reflecting in Wilder's eyes. She hadn't even noticed that she hadn't been paying attention to anything but the man, if you could even call him that, in front of her. Turning quickly, the screams and sobbing of everyone around her filled her ears. It took Sable a few moments to adjust to what she was looking at. The planet in front of them, their new start, their new home, was entirely in flames. Orange flames, like veins, ran around the whole planet. They had been told that Rancor would be blooming with greens and purples, even from the outside. But now, all they saw were red and blacks. Sable didn't know when she had reached for Wilder's hand, but the only thing she could feel was his gentle squeezes to keep her grounded. Everything she had just found out was forgotten. Everyone around them were running around, crying and freaking out. Some were on their knees, heads in their hands, and their bodies shaking. Wilder would never get his life of freedom, and Sable would never see her twin again. The seeds of dominion. 1. I always knew the world was constructed on lies. Not minor falsehoods or innocent misunderstandings, but carefully cultivated fabrications designed to shape reality. From my earliest memories, even before my parents disappeared, I sensed that truth was not something freely given. It was deliberately hidden, erased, and rewritten. My parents were among the first to resist. They stood against the dominion when resistance still felt possible, believing knowledge was a right worth risking everything to protect. They vanished when I was 6, quietly removed by the regime, their identities reduced to whispers and fading memories. Ronan and Elise Marek, old friends of my parents and former resistance fighters themselves, took me in. They taught me how to navigate the unseen currents beneath the surface, how to decode the hidden language of control, the dominion embedded in every broadcast and headline. They showed me the creeping corporate feudalism that had slowly replaced democracy as powerful corporations silently took ownership of entire districts, deciding who prospered and who disappeared. By 16, I was adept at uncovering secrets. I immersed myself in encrypted data streams and forgotten archives. Ronan and Elise warned me. Knowing too much was dangerous, but ignorance was deadly. The Dominion thrived because people feared the truth. They accepted convenience over freedom. My decision to become a journalist was calculated. It allowed me to move unnoticed, to gather information without drawing suspicion. Yet, deep down, I knew this was more than a career. It was a weapon against tyranny. Truth was powerful, but proof was lethal. 2. You ever feel like you're chasing ghosts, Joran? I glanced up from my tablet, where Dominion data feeds ran endlessly, searching for cracks in their carefully constructed narratives. Devin Rains, my closest friend since our academy days, watched me from across the cafe table, worry shadowing his face. We chase ghosts because they're the only thing the Dominion fears, I replied evenly. Devin's discomfort was palpable, a subtle anxiety coloring every gesture. Recently, he'd changed. He'd grown cautious, hesitant. The war's been over for years, Devin said softly. Maybe they won because no one noticed until it was too late. Now, all we're doing is marking ourselves as targets. His words unsettled me, not for their truth, but because they were spoken from fear. Devin's courage had once matched mine, his idealism unwavering. Something had shifted. What's changed, Devin? I leaned forward, lowering my voice instinctively. Surveillance was everywhere, hidden in plain sight. He hesitated, eyes flicking nervously to the security camera mounted near the ceiling. There's a new list, he whispered. It's not for criminals or dissidents. It's for people who question too much. It's called the Inquiry List. I understood immediately. A blacklist was straightforward: immediate punishment or exile. The inquiry list was something darker, insidious. It marked you for isolation, slow erosion, and eventual disappearance. "You're on it," I stated flatly. Watching him closely, he nodded slowly. "We both are." A silent understanding passed between us. Devon was frightened, and fear made people dangerous. Still, I wasn't about to stop. Not now, when the stakes had finally become clear. 3. Devon disappeared within days. His presence simply ceased. No messages, no records, no traces. Just silence. I pursued answers with relentless determination, hacking into secured archives, whispering in underground circles, piecing together fragments of his fate. Each revelation deepened my dread. The Dominion protocol wasn't coming. It had arrived. Our world was now governed by rigid conformity, loyalty measured in unquestioning obedience. Citizens weren't people. They were assets, evaluated for their utility, discarded when inconvenient. I stared numbly at the evidence on my tablet. Democracy hadn't merely been undermined, it had been methodically dismantled. Devon wasn't dead, not physically. He had been absorbed, transformed into something compliant and controlled. 4. I knew when they would come. Patterns were easy to spot if you paid attention. Increased drone patrols, subtle shifts in daily broadcasts, neighbors becoming suddenly distant. It was all carefully staged. When the knock finally came, I was already on the move. Out through the fire escape, down silent alleyways, navigating shadows with practiced ease. My heart pounded, but my breathing remained steady. Panic was a luxury I couldn't afford. The train station loomed ahead, my gateway to the industrial underground. Passengers waited silently, their faces blank, eyes fixed firmly forward. I slipped onto the platform just as Dominion enforcers emerged, their armored presence imposing and inevitable. Joran Vale, the voice sent a chill down my spine. Not the enforcer's voice, but Devon's. I turned slowly, dread twisting inside me. Devon stood among them, dressed in Dominion black, his eyes hollow and distant. I recognized the vacancy instantly. The Dominion had taken not only his freedom, but his spirit. "Come quietly," he intoned, emotionless. "You gave in," I accused bitterly. "They made you afraid, and you surrendered." "I adapted," he replied mechanically. "No," I said sharply. "Adaptation isn't compliance." His gaze faltered, something brief and vulnerable flickering behind those empty eyes. Devon reached toward me, an automated reflex of the Dominion's control. The train doors hissed open beside me, a brief window of opportunity. Devon lunged, grabbing my shoulder. Instinct took over. I drove my elbow hard into his ribs, feeling him recoil sharply, gasping for breath. His grip loosened, and I wrenched free, leaping onto the train just as the doors snapped shut behind me. Through the window, Devon stared helplessly, now a shadow fading into the distance. Regret etched his features briefly before the darkness reclaimed him. The train surged forward, carrying me into uncertainty, but also toward freedom. 5. As the city lights blurred into a mosaic of neon and shadow, I steadied my breathing. The train hummed rhythmically beneath my feet, a steady reassurance that, for now, I was still free. Passengers around me stared blankly ahead, eyes purposely unfocused, trained to remain ignorant of anything that might threaten their carefully curated peace. But I was awake. The Dominion thrived on the apathy of the masses, believing control was absolute because compliance was easy. Yet beneath that facade lay a deep-seated fear of truth, a fragile illusion ready to shatter. I had lost Devon, just as I'd lost my parents. Each loss carved itself into my being. Painful reminders that truth always came at a cost. But their sacrifices were not in vain. They'd ignited a flame in me, nurtured by Ronan and Elise, a flame of resistance, a commitment to remember, to speak, and to expose the lies. The Dominion underestimated the strength of those who remembered, those who chose truth over comfort. They believed themselves untouchable, their rule eternal. But power built upon lies was fundamentally unstable, vulnerable to those willing to risk everything for the truth. As the train raced deeper into the industrial outskirts, darkness settled around me, punctuated only by flickering lights and distant shadows. I pressed my forehead gently against the cold window, eyes scanning the landscape rushing past. Factories loomed on the horizon, silent giants standing guard over secrets yet undiscovered. My heart steadied, determination hardening like tempered steel. They might hunt me, silence me, or erase my name from history, but they couldn't erase the truth. Not while people like me still breathed. The Dominion hadn't won, not yet, on a parallel track, unnoticed. Another train moved quietly through the shadows. Inside, illuminated by the pale glow of a screen, a figure stared intently at my image, captured by surveillance cameras. Eyes narrowed thoughtfully, studying every detail of my escape, every gesture, every defiance. From the tinted window of his train car, Devon watched the darkness unfold, shadows reflecting in his eyes no longer hollow, but haunted by the flicker of something forgotten. He whispered softly to himself, a truth long buried, but impossible to erase. The truth is not a ghost, it is a weapon. And outside, the city faded slowly into darkness, falling to conclusions. Fear can make you do crazy things. Cry, laugh, scream, even kill. At this precise moment, it is causing a man named Joe to run for his life. It is also causing 7 members of an unknown faction to chase him. Joe doesn't know where he is going, only that he has to get away. His chest pulses in and out as his body tries to drag in air to compensate for all the running. His legs ache as he pushes them to go faster. A voice in his head urges him on. We need to go faster. Shut up. You think I don't know that? It's your fault we're running in the first place. Gosh, a guy can't have a little fun. You killed those guys. Correction, you killed those guys. As far as anyone else knows, I am just a figment of your imagination. Besides, now you can be certain that the men who killed your family have been punished for their actions. I didn't need your help. The police would have handled it. Now these guys are chasing us. Less complaining, more running. Joe continues sprinting through the autumn-colored trees, looking for an escape. As he taps into his second wind, he sees sunlight beaming down ahead. He gets to a bright clearing, a good distance ahead of his pursuers. The beginnings of a sigh of relief melt into a sigh of despair. On the other side of the very narrow leaf-filled clearing is a very wide, rock-filled gorge. He skids to the edge, kicking a few dozen leaves over the edge. Gasping for air, with his hands on his knees, he watches as the leaves slowly pinwheel out of sight. A good 1,000-foot drop followed by slopes of jagged rock. I'll definitely feel that in the morning. We could make it. Shut up. No, we can't. I could make it. Well, I can't. He takes a step back and puts his hands behind his back as he tries to catch his breath. As he turns around, a single man wearing green, brown, and black fatigues skids into the clearing. He sees Joe and raises his assault rifle. The gun trembles slightly as the soldier trains it on him. Joe watches as the nervous soldier's finger tightens slightly on the trigger. A single bead of sweat slides down the soldier's forehead as he begins to talk. We're gonna need you to come with us. I'm afraid I can't do that. That's right. Tell him. We aren't going anywhere with him. Puh, please, we're not gonna hurt you. I find that hard to believe. If I remember correctly, you guys were shooting at me not too long ago. Come on, there's only one of him. We can take him. We just want to talk to you. Do some tests, ask some questions. What if you don't like what you hear? What if your tests and your questions don't get you the answers that you want? What then? Huh? Why haven't we killed him yet? Would you shut up already? Who are you talking to? Nobody, okay. I think I'll decline. Wow. I didn't think you had it in ya. That is not an option! A different voice booms from within the trees. The rest of the group bursts into the clearing, all wearing matching fatigues. Their assault rifles are all trained on him. Just answer me one question. Why do you have to be able to explain everything? Why do you have to know how everything works? Joe yells, with tears of anger welling up in his eyes. Are you crying? What a baby. How about less crying and more killing? If it isn't normal, let's chase it down and shoot at it with automatic weapons and force it to cooperate. Find out how it works by any means necessary. You people disgust me. If you don't kill them soon, I will. Would you shut up already, sir? I don't know who you are talking to, but we can do this the easy way, or we can do this the hard way. Well, as my mother always said, if it's not hard, then it is not worth doing. Whoa, what are you doing? They are looking for a reason to kill us. If they kill me, you die too. As Joe says this, he slowly takes his hands from behind his back. A 40-inch, sleek, razor-sharp, black katana is held firmly in each hand. As they see the blades, their fingers squeeze the triggers. Volleys of bullets fly towards Joe, each trying to reach the target first. His swords move lightning fast as he takes into account where on his body they are aiming and tries to deflect as many bullets as possible. Despite his efforts, he's breathing through a couple new holes by the time they need to reload. They watch anxiously as Joe stumbles forward. The sword in his left hand sticks into the ground and keeps him from falling all the way to the ground. He leans heavily on the sword as ragged, shallow breaths tear out of him. Dark red blood stains his shirt and pants in various places. He sways, but manages to stand, leaving the sword embedded in the ground. He tries to look at them, but the 7 soldiers double into 14. He shakes his head and tries again, but the 14 soldiers are now swimming in front of his vision. He settles on focusing on the group as a whole, seeing the forest, not the trees. Did I pass the test? Oh well. My answer is still no. If you want my body, you'll have to fetch it. Joe slurs. You are seriously losing it. You are going to get us killed. No, don't! Joe spreads his arms and falls backwards off of the cliff. The soldiers dash to the edge and see him falling. He watches as the edge of the cliff and their faces shrink away from him. The wind whips his clothes wildly as it accelerates past him. He closes his eyes, slows his breathing, and concentrates. Suddenly, the sound of the wind slows and then stops. He opens his eyes and sees that he is now floating in mid-air. A faint glow and a quiet hum emanates from his left hand. He looks down and sees that about 5 feet under him is one particularly sharp shard of black rock that would have ended up right through his chest. He also notices that his vision has blacked out on the edge. Something was wrong. What did you do? I took over. It's obvious that you were on a suicide mission with that little stunt you pulled. I did too much work to get this body to just let you destroy us like this." He contemplates his grisly death for a second before reorienting himself. Using the power from his hands, he zooms back up towards the cliff edge. His head pops up over the ridge as the 7 soldiers are leaving the clearing. They walk slowly and lackadaisically back into the trees in a single file line. Apparently, his guaranteed death is good enough for them. His anger intensifies with this nonchalant disregard for him as a person. The fact that they don't really care about retrieving the body pisses him off. They even left his sword exactly where it got stuck in the ground. The nails on his right hand dig into his palm as his grip tightens on the sword. The angry look on his face morphs into a grin. He is going to enjoy what is about to happen. He floats back onto the cliff and lands silently on the ground. He quietly picks up his second sword and zips to the soldier, bringing up the rear. In one swift moment, he puts one sword through his back and uses the second sword to separate his head from his body. The head spins wildly as it tumbles into a nearby pile of leaves. He pushes the soldier's body out of the way and heads towards the second soldier. The second soldier gets cut down in one stroke, starting from his right shoulder and ending at his left hip. As the top half of the body slides away diagonally from the bottom half, Joe sees that the other soldiers have become aware of his presence. Their eyes widen and their mouths hang open as they realize the man that they thought was dead is still very much alive. Joe uses the moment of hesitation to close in. The third soldier is split vertically in half as Joe brings the sword right up through the middle of him, splitting him in half like a deli sandwich. He steps through the space the third soldier's body once occupied and heads toward the fourth soldier. He rams both swords into the soldier's abdomen and sees the soldier's eyes widen with pain. He pulls both swords in opposite directions, shredding the soldier's midsection. He lifts his foot and kicks the soldier, sending his body to the ground with a thump. 4 down, 3 to go. The remaining 3 soldiers spread out and raise their assault rifles. Not this time, Joe snarls at them. Not like this. It was never supposed to be like this. He spins the swords one time in his hands as he steps over the fourth soldier's quickly cooling body. Raising the swords in his hands, he throws them at the 2 outside soldiers. Both soldiers are struck between the eyes before they even get off a shot. The force of the swords knock them both backwards. One of the swords plunges into the ground, propping the 5th soldier's body up at a 15-degree angle. Gravity slowly pulls the body down the blood-soaked blade. The other blade pins the sixth soldier head first to the gnarled trunk of a nearby tree. This time, gravity works quicker and splits his skull as his body slumps to the ground. Joe, now weaponless, bravely strides toward the last soldier as the final soldier goes to shoot. Joe grabs the end of his gun and quickly shoves it up. The single shot the soldier gets off intertwines with the painful crunch of bones as the gun sight collides with his nose. The shot flies harmlessly into the air above their heads. The final soldier stumbles backwards, struggling to pull air through his bloodied nostrils. The strap attached to the rifle, still in Joe's hand, keeps him from falling. Joe pulls the barrel of the gun down a couple of inches and jams it under the soldier's chin. The soldier is still dazed from his new breathing impairment and doesn't even realize what is happening. The automatic fire perforating his brain quickly takes care of his need to breathe. Joe's grin widens into a smile as he looks at his work. They were right to fear me, Joe thinks to himself. Not like this. He prepares to go retrieve his swords when a mysterious pain stops him in his tracks. His head feels like it is about to split open. He slams his eyes shut, trying to not pass out. When he reopens his eyes, all he can see is a bright orange light. He blinks a couple times and realizes that he is on his back, staring up at the setting sun. He looks down and sees a sharp, blood-stained rock protruding from his stomach, looking like a blood volcano just sprouted out of his chest. His mind struggles to come to terms with what has just happened, but his eviscerated midsection makes it hard. He tries to speak, but all that comes out of his mouth is a splatter of blood. It was all in his mind. No miraculous survival, no sweet revenge, no daring escape. Just a terrified man sprawled, broken and bloodied, at the bottom of a rocky gorge. He lived his life in fear, and it was this fear that eventually drove him to his death. At least the voice in his head is finally quiet. His gasping breaths slow, as the last thing he sees is the sun slipping beneath the horizon. Fear can make you do crazy things. Cry, laugh, scream, even kill. Right about now, it was the last thought that crossed Joe's mind as his brain seeped out of his shattered skull. The midnight ride. It was a dark night, one of those without any stars to look at, and a dark moon. Not even the universe was interested in what was about to happen. There was no spotlight over me, nor a guiding light to help me escape. As I ran to my car, one of my heels broke, and I twisted my ankle. I took out the shoes and limped to the door while looking for the keys in my purse. Damn big fancy bags. This whole scenario would have been much easier with jeans and sneakers. But that was not something I could change, and dreaming about better times would not help me either. My hands were trembling, and I was about to empty the bag when I touched the furry pom-pom I had attached to my keychain days before. I took out the keys, opened the door, and once I was inside, I locked the car. The street was empty. No one was screaming my name or running after me, and I took a deep breath before starting the motor. When I passed the campus gates, I felt light and smiled. I was free, and I felt happy. Before entering the highway, I stopped at the last traffic light and adjusted the mirror. I could not even remember the last time I touched it. And then, when I lowered it, I saw them smiling at me and waving. I tried to open the door. I wanted to jump out, but Amir moved his arm to my neck and pinned me to my seat. Ezra moved to the front slowly, while I struggled to move or breathe. Suddenly, everything hurt, and I did the only thing I could. I pushed the gas pedal with my foot, and my ankle cracked, making the pain even worse. Ezra took the wheel, while I tried to free myself from the strangling arm. But Amir whispered in my ear, "This will happen, whether you like it or not. I gave you the choice." His teeth sank into my neck, and as the pressure increased in my skin and the wound started to burn, I felt my life running away from me. The blood spilled over my white dress, forming stains that seemed broken rose petals. And shortly after, my head fell on Ezra's lap, and the car stopped in the middle of the highway. "Move her," said Amir. And Ezra grabbed my body and threw it to the back seat like I was weightless. Amir sat in the driver's seat, and once Ezra sat by his side, the car started again. I could barely breathe. The only thought in my mind was how much blood I had lost, and how much more was now running down the leather I was lying in. I had no more pain, but I was starting to feel cold. And although I wanted desperately to scream and cry, I just couldn't. He betrayed me, I thought. He's helping him. I heard the sound of the radio buzzing, and then the music. Sympathy for the devil. Really? I thought, and I felt like laughing, though I couldn't. Would he now take the end of his sleeves and take them out of his jacket? What would the 16-year-old me have done in this situation? I should have been given an option and not forced into this. The sun was rising when I woke up. Everything around me was flooded with orange light, and I felt the warmth as the first rays touched my skin. I did not want to open my eyes fully, but I understood I was not gone, at least not completely, which meant I still had the right to see the sun again. It burned at first, though. Everything hurt, but I did not mind. It was like something else was pushing for me, and my body did not belong to me anymore. I was still in the back of the car, and my dress and the seat were drenched in red. My blood. How had I lost so much blood? Why was I awake? I raised my head, and my neck cracked. I never liked that sound, but that day, it was scarier than ever. The light passing through the front window blinded me for a second, but when I got used to it, I saw someone sitting in the passenger seat. I opened my mouth, but the words did not come out. Ezra, I thought, convinced that I still had that power on me, that he would listen to my thoughts, that he would attend my command if Amir were far away from us. Ezra, please. But he did not turn. I moved my arm. I wanted to sit, but I couldn't. My limbs failed me, and the only thing I managed was to grab his arm and fall to the car floor. He moved then, but not the way I expected. I was still holding his sleeve when I saw the blood crossing his arm, the wound in his neck, and his eyes opened, lost, lifeless. Then someone opened the door, grabbed me by the ankles, and dragged me out of the car. I felt the pain once more, like someone was stabbing me with those expensive shoes I had bought weeks before. When my head hit the floor, I closed my eyes. I did not want to see what was about to happen. You complain too much, said Amir, though I knew I was the only one who could hear him. There he was, again, inside my head. You are such a romantic, he continued. He was not helpful, no matter how much you tried to make him. He was not worthy. He helped you, I thought. He was just a pretty puppet. And the puppets are good to play. I still had my eyes closed and felt a tear running down my face. He'll kill me. This all will pass, I thought. Don't be ridiculous, I heard. We have work to do. I don't like to waste talent, tama, or blood. You should know that about me already. After getting rid of Ezra, he lifted my body as if I were a little rag doll and sat me in the passenger seat. The leather was sticky and smelled funny, but sweet. You'll recover soon. Don't worry. You'll be buying new shoes in no time, he said, as he started the car and put on his sunglasses. The car moved away, and as the sunlight warmed my face, I knew I'd have to come up with a better plan to leave that life, that work, and that man. So today's story has come to an end. Or perhaps it never really ended. There are mysteries still there, questions still unanswered, and sometimes things that seem to only exist in stories can creep into reality in unexpected ways. Are you sure that when you turn off the sound, everything around you will still be normal as before? Or is there something watching you? Either way, always remember that these are just stories, or at least we want to believe that they are. If you like moments of suspense, tension, and breathlessness, don't forget to follow me so you don't miss the next stories. And next time, when you come back, make sure you are ready, because what awaits you may be even scarier than you thought. See you again if you still have the courage to continue listening.